Great. Well, it looks like it's about noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just to introduce myself, I'm Tyler Burrows. I'm one of the recruiters here at Wake Forest University School of Business, and I've been with Wake since 2014, so I know quite a bit about our programs. Today's session is really going to focus on the application process and the curriculum of the MSA program. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to add those to the chat box, and I'll address those when necessary. And like I said, we'll just go through kind of what we want to cover, and then I can answer questions at the end. So it's great to see all of you here. I'll continue to admit students to the webinar as we go through, but I wanted to start today by telling you a little bit about Wake Forest and Winston-Salem. For those of you who aren't familiar, Winston-Salem is about right in the center of the state of North Carolina. So we are about 2 hours from the mountains. While we do have some hiking that's closer by maybe 35, 40 minutes. But Asheville is about 2 hours away. Boone is about 2 hours away. And then we are about 3.5 hours from the beach, with Wrightsville Beach being closest. So we're right in the center of the state. Winston-Salem is sort of a mid-sized city. So we have about 250,000 to 300,000 citizens who live here. Big college town, big university town. We have 5 different universities here in Winston-Salem, with Wake Forest being one of them. And so the pictures that you see on the screen are really just a few pictures of downtown. You can also see the quad right there on the left upper hand corner. And then some other just scenic areas around town and close by. Krispy Kreme is kind of what Winston-Salem is known for. Hopefully you all know what Krispy Kreme donuts are. And so Krispy Kreme is actually founded and headquartered here in Winston. So we always like to talk about them. So Wake Forest and, specifically the School of Business, I'll touch on a little bit today, but this picture that you can see in the background, I have another picture of Farrell Hall, but this is the inside of Farrell Hall. So this is the School of Business. This is where all of your classes are held as an MSA student. This is where all of your student resources are located. So student services or career coaching staff, faculty, all of us sit in this space. So you'll have the opportunity to see this space hopefully in the future, but essentially this is what it looks like on a normal day in the living room. And so this is kind of where students hang out in between classes. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out since we don't get a chance to be inside the building today. And then these are just a few more pictures of Winston-Salem. So we actually have a downtown campus that houses our undergraduate engineering program, and then the first 2 years of the medical school. And so that's the downtown campus. And there's actually a shuttle that runs from the Renolda campus, where Farrell Hall is located, and to the downtown area and to downtown campus. So these are a few pictures. You see Bailey Park down here in the middle, at the bottom middle part of the screen. That's a great park that's right in front of our downtown campus. So students will often hang out there where the weather's nice and study. And so you have access to all these spaces as a Wake Forest student. But again, this just gives you a better sense of what Winston-Salem is like as a city. So we wanted to make sure to highlight that. So as I mentioned, Farrell Hall, busy space. Right now classes are operating in a hybrid. So we've got some classes in person on campus and some classes are online. But this is what a normal day would look like before we, moved around some of this furniture to accommodate social distancing guidelines. But again, Farrell Hall is where you spend the majority of your time as a business school student. So we want to make sure to highlight that space. So we moved into Farrell Hall in 2013, and all of your classes are here. All of the faculty that teach in the program have offices in this space and will hold their office hours here. And so this is a really great facility for us because it's one of the newest and nicest academic buildings on campus. So this is a great space for our students to learn. You've got a picture of the fire pit out front. So that gets a ton of use in the winter and the fall. That gets lit every day by our facilities staff. And you can't really see it in this picture, but there's also a ping pong table out in the front. So students will play ping pong or table tennis, whatever you prefer to call it, in between classes. So anyway, this is just a quick view of the facility. We've got an Einstein Bagel Brothers restaurant in this building. You also have showers and lockers downstairs for students who want to bike to campus. You also have a mini kitchenette for students who want to pack their lunch every day. So it's a really versatile space. And so it houses all of our graduate and undergraduate business programs. and it's a fairly newer academic building, which is great. So a little bit about the School of Business. So we are just one program amongst a few different programs in the School of Business. So we are the MS in Accountancy program, but we also offer a Master's of Science in Business Analytics and a Master's of Science in Management program, as well as an in-person and an online MBA, and then many different undergraduate programs as well. But we consider these three to be what we call accelerated programs. So these are accelerated master's programs. And most of these offer either a 10-month option or sometimes, in the MSA case, it's about an 18-month option between the 3 semesters that you're in the program. So anyway, that's just a little bit about the school. So the way that we structure the School of Business and the way that we structure all of our programs is really with the student at the center. And so you have all of these different services that are associated with the program. So for the MSA program, again, you're at the center, and then you have enrollment management folks like myself. You've also got program faculty and leadership that teach within the program and design curriculum for the program. And then you have these 2 other services, and these really are larger services. It's a huge team of people, but you have an individual liaison with each of these services that is associated with the program. So for us, for integrative student services, you have Mary Knapp, and her role is really just to help you while you're here as a student. So she can help you to find tutoring resources. If you want to become a tutor or like a graduate assistant, for instance, she's kind of that person that would match you up with that. She also is the person that will create and register your class schedule with the registrar each semester. So that's kind of her role within the program, both from an academic but also a student experience standpoint. So she'll work with you if you want to join clubs or create events for fellow students. She's kind of that person, sort of like your advisor in the program. And then we have market readiness and employment, which is just another name for career coaching. So we have a pretty robust career coaching staff, and then a whole team of employer relations staff that seek out employers for Wake Forest students. But you have one person that you work with specifically within this program, and her name is Becca Chase. And she actually graduated from Wake Forest, several years ago, and has worked in public accounting, in healthcare, in consulting. She's worked as a chief financial officer. So she has a wealth of experience, and she helps our students and guides them through the recruiting process that takes place. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, the recruiting process for our accounting program and for accounting in general is pretty structured. So it's helpful to have her to walk you through what that process looks like and talk to you about all of your different options as a student. So with that being said, we'll talk a little bit more about the program. Again, I think these things most students kind of know about when they do their research on the program, but Wake Forest is sort of known for having a very high CPA pass rate. So we've had the highest CPA pass rate for the 20 years, the past 20 years, and really that's just consistency. So we've been in the top 5, at least 19 out of those years, but we've been number 1 for, I believe, 13 out of those 19 years. So anyway, that's just a little bit about the program. Most of our students are accounting majors, but we do open our program to non-accounting undergraduate majors. And then we offer 3 distinct tracks within our program. So we have the audit track, the tax track, and then the financial transaction services track. And I'll talk a little bit about those once we get into the curriculum. So the class profile, a lot of students want to know, like, what size is the program? How many students will be in my classroom? And so this is just a breakdown of the most recent class to enter the program. Keep in mind that we have a 2-semester option and a 3-semester option. So while 106 students began in August, we had about 60 additional students who are finishing up their final semester in the program this past fall. So generally, you could have anywhere from 130 to almost as many as 200 students in the program in the fall semester. But generally, I would say the entering class is about 100 to 130 students each year. It just sort of depends. And then you can see the universities represented. Most of our students come from outside of Wake Forest undergrad. So many of our students come from different schools around the US, and then also from different institutions around the world as well. So 13 unique majors. As I mentioned, accounting is the most popular. I would say that economics and finance are the second and third most popular. And then it's kind of a variety after that. But generally, most students, I'd say about 80% are accounting majors. And then this breakdown over here in this bubble, you can see 23% URG, that stands for underrepresented groups. So this would include populations like African American, Latinx students, or Native American students. So that would be that population. And then female percentage is pretty much 50-50 each year. And then a small percentage of international students as well, with most of these international students coming from mainland China. So 39 double deeks, what that means is that 39 students out of that 106 attended Wake Forest undergrad. So the majority of students actually come from outside of Wake Forest undergrad. So I think that's important to know when you're considering a school. You're not going to get to Wake Forest and feel like an outsider. Everyone's kind of starting over and experiencing this graduate experience themselves, from a fresh perspective. So I think that's important information to know. And then you can, of course, see the class profile breakdown in terms of GMAT, GPA, and that sort of thing. So the curriculum, this is something that's developed quite a bit since I've been here. As I mentioned, I started in 2014, at which point we were not STEM designated or STEM certified. And so our students who were coming into the program obviously had a lot of great opportunities, but I think the STEM certification allows better opportunities for our international students, but even sometimes for our domestic students as well. So you can sort of see this information. It looks like a lot of courses. All of this information is on our website if you ever want to refer to this later. But essentially the foundational courses are courses that are required for students who didn't study accounting as an undergrad, or our international students who didn't study at a US AACSB accredited institution. So what's really important about these foundational courses, I would say, is the intermediate accounting and intro to tax coursework. These are courses that need to be taken at a US AACSB accredited institution. The majority of this information covered in these classes is really what's going to be on the FAR section of the CPA exam. And so it's important that our students are familiar and comfortable with this information. And we, of course, in the US teach generally accepted accounting principles versus what many international schools teach, which is international financial reporting standards. So that's really the basis for this program. But for students who didn't study accounting, this is great because it's a way for them to sort of catch up. And we offer all of these courses with the exception of Business Analytics 1 and Principles of Financial Accounting. We offer all of those in the summer sessions leading up to the start of the fall semester in the program. So anyway, we would let students know if they didn't meet any of these requirements, and we would let them know at the time of admission that they would need to complete these. So the foundational courses, we're not going to focus on too much. The meat of the course, and really what most students enroll in, are these core required courses, analytics courses, and then we'll get into the track specific courses on the next slide. But really our program is either a 30 credit hour program split into 2 semesters or into 3 semesters. So while this looks like a lot of courses, our students are able to complete all of this within either 2 semesters or 3 semesters. And then, of course, if you need the foundational courses, you would take those summer sessions prior to the fall program start. So anyway, all of our students are going to take what you see here in the middle, these core required courses: accounting for derivatives, business combinations or mergers, corporate tax, business law, and professional ethics, and then the strategic cost management course. So all of these, every student, regardless of track, is going to take these courses. And then when we were looking at STEM certification and, what we could add to make our program most relevant and most market relevant, analytics kept popping up. And so we added these 4 courses that you can see here that are required. And so all of our students will take a number of business analytics coursework. And all of these courses are taught by Tom Allman, who was recruited from Deloitte. He was a partner with Deloitte, and he was in charge of analytics for North of America for Deloitte. And so we were fortunate enough to recruit him to Wake Forest and have him teach these courses for us. And of course, all of this is taught through an accounting lens. So all of these skills are very specific skills that are relevant in any number of business applications, but all of this coursework is going to be taught through the accounting lens and what is most relevant to students working either in audit or tax or transaction or advisory services. All of this analytics coursework is going to be really relevant. And that's really where the profession is headed. And so we'll continue to develop our curriculum as we see the profession change. But this, I think, is what's really important is just including this analytics coursework. So all tracks allow a few credit hours for elective coursework. So you have the option of looking more into private equity. There's another ethics practicum that students can complete that replaces our internship. And then there's also financial statement analysis and then an additional data analytics course. So all of these electives you can take. You won't be able to take every single elective while in the program, but you have the option of taking any of these elective courses as long as you have room in your schedule. And also within the tracks, you can take different track specific courses as elective coursework as well. But generally, this is the core required MSA coursework. And again, while I say this looks like a lot of courses, keep in mind that not all of these courses are 3 credit hours. So the way that our program is structured, some classes only last a half of a semester, and those are 1.5 credit hour courses. So you may, start a class in August and say it's a 1.5 credit hour course. We'll say it's accounting data management. You may only have that class from August until mid-October. And then once you finish that class, you'll start a different class. And that could be something like financial statement analysis. And you'll study financial statement analysis from October until the end of the fall semester, which would be in December. So anyway, that's why this looks like a lot of coursework, but keep in mind, not all of these are going to be full semester long courses. So we'll get into the tracks. So years ago, I would have told you that assurance was the most popular track. Most students choose assurance. They go on to work in audit when they graduate. That was pretty common. And so some students would choose assurance, about 60% or so. And that has changed quite a bit. And I'll give you the track breakdown on the next slide. But our most popular track these days is actually financial transaction services, with almost half of our current class studying financial transaction services as their track. And then again, tax has always been about 20% of our student population each year. But really, when you choose these tracks, you'll need to make that decision when you enroll for coursework. So we ask you on the application to designate a track, but keep in mind that that's not something we consider in the application process. That doesn't affect your admission at all. And that's something that you can change up until the point of registering for your classes. And Mary Knapp, who I mentioned earlier, would be the person reaching out to you to confirm that information. So she'll reach out over the summer to register you for coursework. And at that time, she'll get you to confirm your track and how many semesters you're planning on enrolling in the program. So with that being said, you can see this is pretty straightforward. Most of the assurance coursework is pretty standard. And then the tax coursework is very tax specific and gives you a lot of different specializations within tax. But again, most of this coursework is 1.5 credit hours worth of coursework. So most of those tax courses are only a half of a semester long. And then financial transaction services. These courses are mostly taught by Dr. Ajay Patel and Dr. John Dukoch. And funny enough, Dr. Dukoch actually is the author of the textbook for the courses that he teaches. So anyway, these are very highly qualified experts within their fields. They have many years of professional experience in the field, but then also have been teaching this information to our students for quite a while. And so I think that's just made the FTS track very popular. We have experts that teach in this field, but also this information is becoming very relevant and very popular among students. And so we're seeing a lot of students choose the FTS track. And it's one of the tracks that is very specific to Wake Forest curriculum. As to my knowledge, there's not many other, if any other, programs that offer a track that's specializing in transaction services or advisory. And then with this being said, so all of these tracks, you'll choose one of these tracks, but you don't have to necessarily work in this field when you graduate. So all of our students, regardless of what track they choose, they're still going to be highly qualified to work in any one of these areas. So if they want to go and work in audit or tax or advisory, you can study any one of these tracks and still be qualified to work in any one of those areas. So we tell students that you should really choose the track of your interest, because that's not going to dictate what sort of job you get out of the program. It's merely just going to help appeal to your natural interest within accounting and keep you interested in the course material. So definitely choose a track that you're interested in within the program. So this is that breakdown. This is kind of what I mentioned. In the past, I would have said, assurance is the most popular, and it was. I would say about 65% of our students chose assurance. And this year, we really saw that switch to students choosing FTS over the assurance track. And so most students will choose the assurance track, the FTS track. And then, still a pretty large population of the group choosing assurance. And then tax is generally about 18 or 20% of the student body each year. But anyway, that just sort of gives you that breakdown so you can see it. And as I mentioned earlier, so we're seeing, a huge focus, a huge shift into analytics in accounting. We're really seeing the profession of a CPA changing to fit some more of these types of skills. So gone are the days of CPAs doing very tedious testing and, sample transactions. We have technology that does all of that for us now. So even the AICPA, which is the governing body of the CPA exam, they are looking into ways to change the CPA exam to fit kind of the new role of the accountant and what a CPA really does. And so we're starting to see the profession shift. And because of that, we felt like the analytics focus is really important for our students, just to stay most current with the market. And oftentimes it impresses their employers because, these are skills that they certainly know they need, but there's no formal requirement of analytic skill work. So this, I think, has really helped students to stand out amongst their cohort when they start their first jobs. So I mentioned our 3-semester and our 2-semester option, and really the difference between the two is that the 3-semester option allows time for a winter internship, while the 2-semester option is typically for students who have already held a winter internship or a summer public accounting internship, and they've already accepted a full-time offer post-grad. So with the 3-semester option, while no school can guarantee you any sort of internship, we have a very robust recruiting process that takes place. And I'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But essentially, we have the 3-semester option for those students. And it allows them to spread out their curriculum. So you only have to take 9 credit hours to be considered a full-time graduate student. And so you could take that fall, spring, and that following fall semester to spread out that 30 credit hours. And so during the fall semester, our students going through the internship recruiting process will go through their interviews. They'll do office visits where they're actually traveling to that office to interview and get that second round interview. And then hopefully by the end of that fall semester, they will have secured a internship position that will begin in January of that next year. So for the spring semester, for those 3-semester students, they're interning from January to March, and then they're coming back to campus from March to May. So these internships that take place from January to March are typically in larger metropolitan areas like New York or Charlotte, sometimes DC. Some of our students will go to the West Coast. San Francisco is very popular, Dallas, Chicago, some of those other cities. But anyway, for students who are able to secure those winter internships, that's where they go during that time. And then they come back to us in March. For the students who aren't able to secure a January through March winter internship, our career coach will start working with you on applying to summer internships instead. So there's a multi-step process for students going through those internship recruiting processes to help them find employment. Because as we know in public accounting, the internship is the surest path to full-time employment, but it's not the only path. We've had a lot of students be successful in going through summer internship recruiting, or if they weren't successful in the summer internship recruiting, then they'll go through full-time job recruitment in the fall semester. So anyway, with the 3-semester program, those students, like I said, will come back to us in March. They'll finish up the semester. And then all students have the option of staying in the summer to study and sit for the CPA exam. And so this is something that we offer to our students. Basically, we reserve a classroom space. We make faculty available to you over the summer. We offer the Becker Fast Pass product with our students. And generally that's covered by your employer. So the Becker product itself is an additional cost, but your employer is the one that typically pays for that cost. And we basically just allow time for students to study for that CPA exam over the summer. This is also important to know. So the CPA exam is taken at a Prometrics testing center, and these testing centers are all over the United States. So you can sit in North Carolina for any state's exam. So if you're looking to be licensed as a CPA in New York, for instance, you can take that exam in North Carolina. You would just be taking the New York CPA exam at that Prometrics testing center. So I think that's another piece of information that students often miss. They think that they have to be in a specific state or city to take that exam, and that's not true. And our Becker representative will meet with our students throughout the fall and the spring semester to help prepare them on studying and signing up for the exam. So they'll tell you how to file your notice to sit, how to make sure that you've met all of the requirements of the state that you're looking to be licensed in, and they'll walk you through that process. But that's typically what takes place over the summer. So we don't have any courses going on. You're not getting credit, or you're not being graded during the summer or anything like that. We just offer that optional CPA prep. And then the final semester is your easiest semester in the 3-semester program because you're just taking courses and finishing up. So at that point, most students have already taken all 4 exams for the CPA exam, and they're just looking to finish up their degree. And then we have a graduation party in December for those students, with giving them the option to come back that following May to do to participate in the formal graduation ceremony. So that's really the 3-semester program. And then the 2-semester program is the simplest because it's just 15 credit hours each semester. You're just doing coursework. Most of students have already secured a full-time employment offer. For those students who haven't and who choose to go through the 2-semester program, Becca Chase will work with these students to apply to full-time positions. So that's really the difference between the 2 and the 3-semester option. And then the 2-semester option students will have the chance to stay over the summer as well and participate in that CPA review that I mentioned in the previous program. So with the firm recruiting, I talked a little bit about this, but again, just to reiterate, it's a very structured process. So with the recruiting process, pre-enrollment, you start to work with the career coach even before you get here. So when you apply to the program, you'll get, or when you're admitted to the program, you'll get information about Becca Chase, who is our MSA career coach. But once you commit and deposit and enroll in the MSA program, you'll get a consultation with her to prepare you for some of our events, one of which being Meet the Firms. But she'll work with you on your resume to make sure that it's in the Wake Forest format that our recruiters prefer. And then she'll help prepare you for the Meet the Firms event. We actually just had our first Meet the Firms event a couple of weeks ago. And really that's just a formal networking opportunity for you to meet the firms that recruit our students. And so you'll be grouped into 5 or 6 students each, and then you'll rotate as a group to the different firms, meeting partners, managers, associates, recruiters, all different types of people that work for that firm. So you can get a better sense of their culture and ask them questions about their profession, just to get more information on what firms you want to apply to when it comes down to applying to internships. And then the fall semester. So once that starts, you're actually completing mock interviews. You're going to your on-campus interviews, and then typically these are held in Farrell Hall. So the firms would come to us. We'd have an entire day where that firm will be on campus interviewing students who sign up for those interviews. And then the office visits will typically take place in October, and students will have heard back from all of the firms that they've applied to by the end of October, and make decisions on what firms they want to accept offers with, in the, probably I'd say in like November. Most students have chosen which firm they're going to work with. And then for those students, like I mentioned, who didn't secure a winter internship, they'll start working with Becca Chase on how to prepare for the summer internship application season. So all of that sort of takes place, fairly early. So for the spring semester, the students who are interning, they're on internship from January to mid-March. They'll come back after spring break and, take coursework from mid-March to end of April, early May. And then in that final week of the performance, or in the final week of the internship, you'll have your performance review. So in March, most students will have heard back from the firms that they've interned with, knowing whether or not they're receiving a full-time offer. So at that point, you really know, all right, I've got a full-time job offer coming out of the program. And then in the summer, like I mentioned, you sit and study for the CPA exam. And then the final semester, all you're doing at that point is starting the onboarding process with your firm, if you've decided to accept your return offer. And you're finishing up coursework here on campus. So that's really how the recruiting process works for the 3-semester option. For the 2-semester option, it's more just-in-time employment. And so there are no specific deadlines that students apply by. There are no specific deadlines that the firms need to let the students know by, because that's just-in-time hires. So they're hiring for positions that are just now vacant. Whereas the internship recruiting process is very far in advance. And so they're planning for potential, room for hiring. So careers. So most of our students, I think it's no secret, most students in accounting programs want to work in public accounting, and most of them want to go Big Four. We don't push this on the students, but that just tends to be the trend. I think most students want to work for a public accounting firm. And for our international students, there are only 2 of the Big Four that are actually sponsoring international hires. So it's even more competitive for those students. But again, you've got a very individualized career coaching throughout this program to help guide you through that process. And then some of our other firms who are not Big Four will also sponsor international students. So we've got a few other options, but generally our international students are most interested in sponsorship with the Big Four firms. So these are our latest published employment statistics. Average compensation, that's going to be fairly common, for all firms and different locations. Most of our students, like I say, stay on the East Coast. But the difference in salary between a New York start and a Charlotte start, is pretty similar, because both of those cities are fairly expensive to live in. So the cost of living adjustment is pretty similar. It just sort of depends, but generally this is kind of what you could expect. And then I think, again, for our international students, the most important thing to know is that it's a STEM designated program. So that may increase your chances for finding a position at one of these firms or another firm as well. So most of our students stay on the East Coast. This just gives you the actual percentage breakdown of where our students choose to go once they graduate. This 47% that stay in the Southeast, I would say the majority of that is split between Atlanta and Charlotte. Those are the most popular Southeast locations. And then the second or third and fourth most popular locations are going to be DC and New York. That's really what this 20% and this 26% is. You might have a few students that go to Boston each year, but that hasn't been as popular as a New York City preference. So most of our students, I would say, are in those locations. And then the Midwest is really Chicago. Most of those students are going to Chicago. The West Coast is mostly San Francisco, but you may have an occasional Denver office start. So it just sort of depends on the student's preference. And the Southwest is really Dallas. So that's just the general breakdown. The great thing with accounting is that you can really choose where you want to go. There are so many opportunities in accounting. And when you go through the recruiting process, this is one of the things that will ask you to prioritize your top 2 preferences on location. Because the firms, they're so expansive. They have so many office locations. They're going to ask you, where do you want to be? So a lot of students, I think, they think that it's better to be flexible and be open, but they're not going to know where to place you. So they're asking you for your preference because they want to put you in an office that you're going to stay in for quite a while. So they want to know your preference and they want to place you in your preference too. So the application process, so this is really simple. It's online. It's already begun. And so you want to start that process sooner rather than later. When you are filling out the online application, you'll attach your resume and a copy of your unofficial transcript. We got rid of recommendation letters a couple of years ago. So we only require 2 references, and this is just contact information for those references. So they don't have to complete any forms. They're not sending in letters or anything like that. You're just adding their contact information. And so we will reach out to those individuals if we need. And then the GMAT or GRE scores do need to be sent officially, but there is an option for you to ask for a waiver this year on the GRE or the GMAT. And we accept the home test as well if you've taken the home tests for either the GRE or the GMAT. But the way to ask for a waiver, there's certainly going to be minimum criteria. But when you are filling out that section of the application, we'll ask you, have you taken the GRE or the GMAT? And if you select no, there's an additional question that's prompt that tells you, do you want to be considered for this waiver? So generally, students who have graduated from a U.S. institution who have a 3.3 GPA or above and have earned mostly A's and B's in any accounting courses that they've held or taken, or if they've had mostly A's and B's in any quantitative courses that they've taken, generally will be approved for that waiver. But each student is going to be reviewed by the admission committee on a case-by-case basis to receive approval for that waiver. So when you request one of those waivers, it'll come to the admission committee, they'll review your academic transcript, and then you'll get an email notification letting you know if that waiver has been approved. But that's really the process for that. So anyway, it's just an online application. And then the only thing that you need to send in additionally is GMAT or GRE scores if you're not approved for one of those waivers. And then the interview itself, that's something that is done after you've submitted your application, and you can be invited for an admission interview. We have both the Kira Talent recorded interviews and then the Zoom interviews as well, which would be similar to what we're doing right now, but an interview instead of a webinar. So that's really the 3-step process. I've included an application fee waiver, and that's just WFU MSA. So if you see that there on the screen, once you get to the stage of your application where you're ready to submit, you'll see a code box, and you can type that code in there to waive the application fee so that you don't have to pay that $100. So certainly take advantage of that if you can. And then the final process is really just getting an admission decision. So once you've completed those 3 steps, usually within a week or 2 of completing your application, meaning that you've finished your interview, we've received all of your materials, everything like that, you'll get an admission decision. And in that admission decision, you'll also get information about any sort of merit or financial need-based scholarships that you've received as part of your admission offer. And so all of that information will be communicated to you at the time of admission. And then we would ask, generally within anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, we ask students to let us know whether or not they're accepting or declining our admission offer. And that at that point you would be committing to Wake Forest and enrolling. But if students need extensions, we can always take those to the admission committee to allow them more time to consider our admission offer. So anyway, that's really the admission steps, the admission process. I always want to put up the timeline or the application deadlines. Obviously, we've passed the early application timeline, but there's still time to apply. So our absolute final application timeline is August 1st for students who don't need any of those foundational courses. So if you have, completed all of those foundational requirements at a US AACSB accredited institution, August 1st is, the absolute latest that you want to apply. Earlier is always better, both for admission, but also scholarship consideration. So applying early is always best. But the international application deadline is March 1st. So that will give us plenty of time to review your application and get your paperwork processed for the I-20 transfer or for the new issuance of a visa through our international students office. So March 1st is the latest that you want to apply as an international student. So that's just a little bit of information about the curriculum, a little bit about the application process. I know we've got some questions in the chat, so I want to address those. So one of the questions is, how does it work for students facing COVID and choosing to go to online sessions? So this is a great question. And so this semester and last semester, so for the fall and the spring of this year, students were able to indicate, so we surveyed all of our incoming students and asked them, what is your preference on course delivery? And so based on the responses from the survey, they were able to offer at least one section of every online course or I'm sorry, at one section of every course online. So students had that option. And then those students who wanted to be in person, there were probably about a quarter of the classes that we could offer in person on campus. So those who were able to or wanted to be on campus could be. And so they made it to Winston-Salem. For this upcoming year, the university is still making that decision. So we'll let our students know as soon as the university makes a decision. But I expect it'll probably be coming within the next month or so, because we're getting to the point where we need to make that decision so we can start planning for that semester. But that's a great question. The university hasn't made the official decision, but I assume that if nothing else, we'll at least continue to offer what we've offered this year, if not offer additional on-campus coursework. Great. So yeah, so a little bit about the career prep service. I'm sorry, is your question around how do students prepare for careers remotely? Got it. Yeah. So Becca Chase, pretty much all of her sessions that she's done have been virtual at this point. So even our students who were on campus and in Winston-Salem, all of the career prep sessions that she's done and all of the mock interviews have been virtual anyway. So all of that's been moving along as normal, but just in a virtual setting. And the same is true for the recruiting from the firms. So all of their deadlines, all of the normal processes that they would have in a regular year, they've continued to offer virtually. So there hasn't been any divergence of like, we're not hiring or we're moving up or pushing back the deadlines or anything like that. Pretty much from the firms, it's been business as normal. So we haven't experienced any differences in terms of like what the firms have offered, or I think the biggest difference is probably the internship timeline. It's much shorter. So the internships over the summer went from 8 weeks to 2 weeks. The internships in the fall, I believe most of them have been full 8-week internships, but some of them have been dwindled down a little bit. It just depends on the firm, quite honestly. And the offices. The office locations vary quite a bit depending on what office location you're in, because they sort of operate on their own, even though they're associated with the larger organization of EY or PwC. Each city's office has their own sort of way of doing things, and they have their own sort of processes in place. But yeah, we haven't experienced any major changes in terms of like how many positions they're hiring for or anything like that. So pretty much you continue to do all of the career prep, meet the firms, the interview itself, all of that is done virtually. I will say one of the biggest issues for international students is that you do need to be physically in the US, even if you're completing an internship virtually. So that has something to do with the working requirements that the the Department of Homeland Security requires. And so you do need to be physically in the US in order to complete a virtual internship, even if you're not going into that office. So that's one of the only other issues. Yeah, so previous experience, even with China Big Four, I think is still a benefit. There's no official way to judge that, but being familiar with the organization, being familiar with the processes is helpful, especially having had any public accounting internship experience, not just Big Four, regardless of what country you're in. Having public accounting experience on your resume is going to be helpful in that recruiting process as well. Yeah. And I would also tell you too, we do a couple of sessions with Becca Chase and Mary Knapp, who are those resources that I mentioned. And those are virtual sessions just like this one. So I definitely encourage you to sign up for those if you're interested, because they can speak to it even more specifically than I can. So Becca works in this every day, whereas I only hear kind of snippets from Becca. So, but great questions. Certainly concerns for our students going through that recruiting process. Cool. Great. Well, I wanted to allow any other questions in the chat before we end today, but But please let me know if you've got individual questions that you don't feel comfortable asking the group. This is my information up here on the screen. You can email me or text me or call me individually. Calls from China don't work, but we can set up a Zoom session if you need. And we can communicate that way if we need to. But generally, I can get text messages and emails. But for whatever reason, the international calling doesn't work on my phone. And we're still working from home at this point. So yeah, of course. Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending today's session. I hope it was informative. Certainly hope that you consider applying to the program, and would love to see you here next year. Just let me know if you have any questions that come up, and hopefully we'll see your applications soon.